Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Deputy Governor of Bank Indonesia, Bapak Dodi Budiwaluyo, Governor of Bank Negara Malaysia in 2000 till 2016, also Bank Indonesia Institute Honorary Board Member and INCEIF Chancellor, Tan Sri Zeti Akhtar Aziz, Executive Director of Bank Indonesia Institute, Dr. Solikin M. Juhro, Rector of Indonesian International University, Professor Komarudin Hidayat, distinguished speakers and moderator, President and CEO of INCEIF, Professor Dr. Muhammad Azmi Omar, Executive Director of ISRA, Professor Dr. Muhammad Akram Aldin, Acting Director General of Islamic Research and Training Institute, Dr. Sami Al-Suwailem, Vice Rector II of Indonesian International Islamic University and Director at Bank Indonesia, Dr. Dadang Mulyawan, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the webinar and MOC signing between INCEIF, ISRA, and Bank Indonesia Institute. First of all, praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for His grace and mercies so we can gather at this event today. And second, let us greet and pray to our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who had brought us to the path of light. To begin the program, let's start this event by reciting Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now, may we invite Ustadz Henrianto to recite the Holy Quran and Dua.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها وصل عليهم إن صلاتك سكن لهم والله سميع عليم ألم يعلموا أن الله هو يقبل التوبة عن عباده ويأخذ الصدقات وأن الله هو التواب الرحيم وقل اعملوا فسيرى الله عملكم ورسوله والمؤمنون وستردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك الكريم وعظيم سلطانك اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم الأموات، فيا قاضي الحاجات اللهم سهل في كل أمورنا، اللهم سهل في كل أمورنا، اللهم سهل في كل أمورنا. Ya Allah, mudahkanlah segala urusan kami ya Allah. Mudahkan segala urusan kami ya Allah. Engkau maha yang memudahkan segala urusan hamba-hambamu ya Allah. Maka kami mohon kepadamu ya Allah, mudahkan segala urusan kami ya Allah. Allahumma taqabbal minna salatana wa siyamana wa ruku'ana wa sujudana wa takhashu'ana وجميع أعمالنا يا رب العالمين. اللهم بارك في أعمالنا، اللهم بارك في أعمالنا، اللهم بارك في أعمالنا، اللهم بارك في مالنا، اللهم بارك في أموالنا، اللهم بارك في كل أمورنا يا رب العالمين. Ya Allah, berkahi harta kami ya Allah, berkahi segala urusan kami ya Allah, berkahi pekerjaan kami ya Allah, berkahi institusi kami ya Allah. Allahumma arinal haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arinal batila batila warzuqna ijtinabah. Allahumma arinal haqqa haqqa وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. Ya Allah, dengan zat-Mu yang maha mulia, yang maha tinggi, yang maha besar, kami mohon kepadamu ya Allah, tunjukkan kepada kami yang hak adalah hak ya Allah, tunjukkan kepada kami yang hak adalah hak ya Allah, dan berikan kami kekuatan untuk mengikuti yang hak itu ya Allah, ya Rabban, ya Rahman, ya Rahim. Ya Allah, kuatkan niat kami ya Allah, tekad kami untuk berhijrah ke jalan yang Engkau ridhai ya Allah, untuk mencari keridhaan-Mu ya Allah. Kami mohon kepadamu ya Allah, kuatkan tekad kami ya Allah untuk berhijrah ya Allah. Ya Allah, tampakkanlah kepada kami yang batil adalah batil, dan berikanlah kami kekuatan untuk tidak mengikuti yang batil ya Allah. Berikan kami kekuatan untuk tidak mengikuti yang batil ya Allah, dan berikanlah kami kekuatan ya Allah, kekuatan untuk menjauhi segala yang Engkau tidak ridhoi ya Allah, yang Engkau murkai ya Allah. Ya Rabbana ya Rahim, istajib du'ana ya Rabbal Alamin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you, Ustad Hendrianto, for the Holy Quran recitation and dua. May Allah always give us guidance and help. Amin. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin the first agenda, let us present you the Bank Indonesia Institute Manifesto. Ladies and gentlemen, to mark the MOC signing and to officially open the webinar, may we invite Head of Bank Indonesia Institute, Dr. Salikin M. Juhro, to deliver the opening remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished speakers, Dr. Tan Sri Zeti Akhtar Aziz, former Governor of Bank Negara Malaysia, member of BI Institute Honorary Board, and Chancellor of INCEIF. Professor Dato' Dr. Asmi Omar, President and CEO of INCEIF. Professor Komarudin Hidayat, Rector of Indonesian International Islamic University. Dr. Sami Al-Suwailem, Acting Director General Islamic Research and Training Institute, Professor Dr. Muhammad Akram Laldin, Executive Director of ISRA, Dr. Dadang Mulyaman, Vice Rector of Indonesian International Islamic University and Director at Bank Indonesia, distinguished guests from INCEIF, KNEKS, IAEI, MES, and ISEI, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon and good morning for some else. First of all, let us praise Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, for only by His grace and mercy we can all congregate this afternoon, despite virtually, to partake in the official ceremony of the signing of Memorandum of Commitment between Bank Indonesia Institute and INCEIF, and the webinar marking to the road to Indonesia Syariah Economic Festival 2020. On behalf of Bank Indonesia, I would like to welcome you all and thank you for your participation. The webinar that will come shortly is jointly organized by Bank Indonesia Institute, INCEIF, and Bank Indonesia Strategic Partners Institution, among others, National Committee on Sharia Economy and Finance, Indonesian Association of Sharia Economics, Sharia Economy Society, and Indonesian Economics Association. Accordingly, I'd like to extend Bank Indonesia appreciation for this collaboration. The theme of the webinar is both timely and topical. That is, rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance in post-pandemic era, driving change through research. Indeed, this year is a moment of reflection for many of us. The COVID-19 pandemic is forcing us in the global policy circles to take a step back, to re-examine the path we had taken and ponder on the kind of calibrations we need to undertake going forward. For those in the research circle, this is also the moment for earnest rethinking on the research agenda that should be on our plate. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic is the most crucial global calamity of the century. It exposes cracks in every nation's greatness. The pandemic has displayed its contrasting consequence on human civilization and brought us into a pause and reflection. Yet, we need to move forward while not forgetting the pre-existing trends that are currently swamped by pandemic. There are at least 3 pre-pandemic trends that we need to be mindful of, as they may significantly shape our post-COVID-19 era. First is the return to excesses and natural resource depletion. Despite the economic calamity being presented by COVID-19, ironically, the pandemic has also created a very positive impact on the environment. Ecosystems are being greatly recovered. A clear sky in big cities, the pollution level is shrinking. From the point of view of the Earth carrying capacity, the COVID-19 is resetting the Earth for a more sustainable trajectory. It also means that our previous life was that of excess. A big challenge for humankind in post-COVID-19 era is to get to the level of employment we once had, without depleting the natural resource and the excess consumption in pre-COVID-19 era. Second is the skill and bias technological change. Pre-COVID-19 global economic was highlighted by rising inequality amidst high growth and successful poverty reduction in many countries in the developing world. This seems at odds with the fact that many low-income and lower middle-income economies entering higher income status. Of late, we have nailed down the culprit. Unsurprisingly, it is technological change and the way it has altered the character of labor demand. Skilled workers with ability to perform non-routine cognitive tasks are the clear winners. The world favors the skilled and highly educated workers. Labor market adjustments are painful for the millennial unskilled laborers. This group of people has to forego too much of the current consumption for sustaining longer-term consumption through human capital investment. What can the state do? To them is the answer we must all seek. Despite humanity's secret weapon, that is their capacity to adapt to changing circumstances and unanticipated shocks, we ought to equip people with the ability to keep up with the future job requirements. Third, concomitant to the skill and routine bias technological change is the rise in digitalization. On the one hand, digitalization has brought immense convenience and benefit for both consumers and producers by promoting market expansion, fostering product and process innovation, bringing operational efficiency and cost reduction, and even financial inclusion. Yet, digitalization also brings new and yet fully understood risks that may jeopardize monetary and financial stability. The technological disruption, together with the COVID-19 disruption, almost certainly lead to the major displacement in the labor markets. The digitalization has produced homegrown unicorns that affect people's lives positively. Yet it has also introduced new and more challenging labor market outcomes that demand policy improvements. Faced by these challenges, digital technology, inclusivity, and sustainability are the prominent factors to win the post-virus era. Central banks around the world have endeavored to keep up with these rising new challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, effective response to the challenges that I have mentioned hinges upon, among others, to the ability economists, including scholars in Islamic economics and finance, to rethink the proper and timely economic policy responses. Scholars in Islamic economics and finance, in particular, are presented with opportunities to provide the world with concrete and workable proposals to address those three challenges I just laid out. In the era of global warming, do Islamic economics and finance have something to say about climate risk mitigation? In the area of labor market adjustment, do Islamic economics and finance have concrete proposal on social insurance and protection to address jobless growth and economic inequality amid technological change without forsaking economic efficiency? These are only a few concrete instances that Islamic economic and finance might contribute to the global policy circles and other fresh policy approaches through deeper research. Going forward, Bank Indonesia Institute will promote and foster more policy-oriented research on frontier issues such as climate risk and financial stability, labor market adjustments amid technological change and digitalization. Accordingly, we have included these frontier topics into our research agenda in Bank Indonesia Institute. To further support learning and policy research in frontier subjects, Bank Indonesia Institute has also forged collaboration with other leading institutions in the region. It is within this context that today we will officially commence a strategic partnership between Bank Indonesia and INCEIF by signing of the Memorandum of Commitment between the two leading institutions of advanced learning and research in the region. Bank Indonesia Institute, founded by Bank Indonesia, is an EFMD CLIP accredited corporate university in the area of central banking, while INCEIF, founded by Bank Negara Malaysia, is an AACSB accredited university for Islamic finance. Through collaboration with INCEIF, Bank Indonesia Institute seeks to foster and promote learning and research in the area of Islamic economic and finance. It is in our view that through diversity in approaches and intellectual traditions, we will be aware of alternative and innovative economic policies to address the mounting global challenges ahead of us in post-COVID-19 era. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I would like to end my opening remarks here by thanking Ibu Dr. Tan Sri Zeti Akhtar Aziz and Bapak Profesor Datuk Azmi Omar on behalf of Bank Indonesia for the collaboration between Bank Indonesia Institute and INCEIF that will be commenced today. I'm confident that through this enhanced collaboration, the two institutions can leverage on each other's strengths in providing solutions to global policy issues and informing global policymakers. I would like also to thank Professor Komarudin Hidayat, Rector of Indonesian International Islamic University, for agreeing to deliver his welcoming remarks on behalf of the organizing committee of Indonesia Sharia Economy Festival 2020. Our appreciation also goes to the resource persons of today's seminar, Dr. Sami Al-Suwailem, Professor Dr. Muhammad Akram Laldin, and Dr. Dadang Mulyawan. Finally, allow me to open today's seminar and marking the Road to Indonesia Sharia Economic Festival 2020 on rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance in post-pandemic era, driving change through research. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, the two renowned International Center of Excellence leaders, Bank Indonesia Institute, the world-class Central Bank Corporate University, and INCEIF, the Global University of Islamic Finance, will work hand in hand to strengthen, promote, and develop research and education in Islamic economic and finance. We are pleased to announce that Bank Indonesia Institute and INCEIF have agreed to sign the Memorandum of Commitment for a better research and education in Islamic economic and finance. Ladies and gentlemen, we present you the Memorandum of Commitment between Bank Indonesia Institute and INCEIF.
Facing economic complex challenges in today's vulnerable world financial landscape, it is crucial for Islamic economic and finance leaders to strategically collaborate for their advancement so that the sustainable and socially inclusive inherent solutions in Islamic economic and finance can be harnessed to shape a better economic and equality performance for all. Two renowned International Center of Excellence leaders, Bank Indonesia Institute, the world-class Central Bank Corporate University, and INCEIF, the Global University of Islamic Finance, share these lofty ideals and the vision of a brighter tomorrow for the region and for the world. Witness the momentous moment as these respected institutions unite on their shared mission and sign the Memorandum of Commitment to strengthen, promote, and develop research and education in Islamic economic and finance.
Participants, ladies and gentlemen, now we will invite all of you to join the virtual group photo. Please ensure that your camera or video is on. We will wait for a while for everybody to turn on the camera. The virtual group photos will be taken in 4 times. Now I will count for the first photo. The first photo will be taken in the count of 3, 2, 1. Second photo, 3, 2, 1. Now the third photo, 3, 2, 1. And now for the last one, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for joining us at the MOC signing session, and after this, we will continue to the next agenda. Webinar on rethinking the role of Islamic economic and finance in post-pandemic era, driving change through research. Participants, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to listen to the welcoming speech delivered by the Rector of Indonesian and International Islamic University, Professor Komarudin Hidayat.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa syukrillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'du. Today, I'm very delighted. In this forum, I meet a lot of familiar faces. I know them, but sorry, I cannot mention one by them. Certainly, I'm very honored to be able to participate in this classy and prestigious seminar. Well, I would start by mentioning some important names here. First, Chancellor of INCEIF, Tan Sri Dato Dr. Zeti Akhtar Aziz, Professor Dato Dr. Azmi Umar, President and CEO of the INCEIF, Dr. Solikin M. Juhro, the head of Bank Indonesia Institute, distinguished speaker and all participants. It is with great pleasure to welcome you to this joint program on Bank Indonesia Institute, INCEIF, and Islamic webinar, which discusses the topic on how rethinking the role on Islamic economics and finance in post-pandemic era, that is, driving change through research. The topic is very timely to address the concern on how Islamic economics is able to improve the agility of the society in facing the unforeseen adverse economic condition. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we are all aware that since 2008, global financial and economic turmoil had devastating impacts on the global economy. Many studies reveal that the shortcoming of regulatory framework was one of the main factors that prompt the recent crisis. The inability of global regulatory framework to guard against excessive risk-taking by the global financial players have triggered distortion of market incentive. Furthermore, the advanced financial innovation has led the global financial institution to offer financial products that are not related to real sectors. Before getting a chance to fully recover, another wave is coming. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the global economy very significantly, and the pandemic has become a super changer that accelerates the adoption of digital technology in society. Having that in mind, it is necessary to establish a new equilibrium that promotes the financial system that supports real economy, create more ethical and responsible financial practice, and bolster the commitment to attain socio-economic objectives. Islamic finance is relevant in offering such new equilibrium to the financial stability and economic development. Islamic finance could redescribe the basic features of financial system and empower the economic production and broader economic society, including those with low income. In a great extent, it also promotes the element of justice and fairness, sustainability, and inclusion as the essential elements required by the real economy to produce value-added activity. Moreover, Islamic economy and finance stand on some fundamental principles, which include the use of risk-sharing concept instead of risk transfer, discouragement of excessive external borrowing, beside the emphasis on ethical investment activities, social inclusivity, and other Sharia-specific preferences. Those principles of Islamic finance offer some advantages which would enhance the understanding of basic relationship between financial sector and a real economy that is characterized by equity-based transaction and ethics. Furthermore, the risk-sharing principle could promote the partnership in the society rather than having lender-debtor relationship. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, against this backdrop, the theme of our today's program, that is rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance in post-pandemic era, driving change through research, is timely and crucial to be discussed. We will have the opportunity to share thoughts on these issues, particularly to pinpoint on the importance of research activities which are conducted in collaboration among the prominent researchers globally. In light of that, I would like to underline critical points that are imperative to be further developed under various research activities. First, the development of Islamic finance should be conducted within national financial and economic development policy framework. This brings the consequences that the thought of Islamic finance should be present in all aspects of policy development, including macroprudential, fiscal, and monetary policies, besides industrial policy on Islamic finance. The inclusion of Islamic financial industry in the General Financial Assessment Program would attract more attention and effort in developing the industry in a more systematic way. Despite a lot of effort and paid by the international Islamic financial regulatory sectors, certain financial regulatory aspects are still underdeveloped. In order to minimize the absence of adequate prudential, the adoption of conventional regulation, as long as it is not in conflict to the Sharia principle, is worth considering. Despite some technical differences, Islamic finance share the same concern toward the systemic robustness to withstand any uncertainty, either coming from internal or external factors. Dedicatedly designed instrument than any uncertainty, either coming from internal or external factors. Dedicatedly designed instrument, infrastructure, and policy need to be developed to put the level of prudence of the Islamic finance at the same level as the conventional. At the macro level, the development of macroprudential policy has to have adequate coverage into Islamic finance industry. Second, the financial development policy has to be able to revive the Islamic social sectors that has considerable potential for the economic development. The sectors covers the zakat and awqaf sectors that would equip the government with additional formidable vehicle for poverty alleviation program and enhance financial access. Besides, collaboration with other Islamic commercial sectors may also provide significant leverage to the financial system to outreach low-income society and to provide them with low-cost financial service. Adequate resources need to be allocated to systemic and persistent effort for the development for sound zakat and awqaf system, besides also well-designed international collaboration and cooperation. Alhamdulillah, we have prominent speakers with us who are willing to share their views in the areas of potential research activities in Islamic economic and finance. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude my remarks by emphasizing that, supported by well-designed research, Islamic economic and finance offers a new equilibrium to the financial stability and economic development. Therefore, a closer international collaboration among researchers is needed to promote greater roles of Islamic finance in the global economy and financial system. Finally, I would like to once again express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to all contributors of this program. With the presence of prominent speakers and officials, I would expect that we will have a golden chance to exchange our views, deliberate some important issues, and come up with some recommendations to follow up relating to the future research activities in the area of Islamic economy and finance. Well, I hope that you will enjoy this webinar and you will get a lot of benefit from this forum. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now continuing our event to the next agenda, that is to hear the keynote speech, which will be delivered by the Honorable Tan Sri Zeti Akhtar Aziz.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Deputy Governor, Bank Indonesia, Bapak Dodi Budi Waluyo, Executive Director and Head of Bank Indonesia Institute, Dr. Solikin Juro, Rector of Indonesian International Islamic University, Professor Komarudin Hidayat, and President of INCEIF, Professor Dr. Azmi Omar. Also, members of the National Committee for Islamic Economics and Finance, Islamic Economy Society, and the Indonesian Association of Islamic Economists, distinguished guests and speakers. Assalamualaikum. By the grace of Allah, it is my great pleasure to join everyone, albeit virtually, at this webinar jointly organized by INCEIF and the Bank Indonesia Institute. This webinar is held to mark the beginning of a collaboration between INCEIF and the Bank of Indonesia Institute, particularly in the area of research, with the signing of the Memorandum of Commitment this afternoon. The sharing of experience and expertise between Indonesia and Malaysia will enhance the potential to generate groundbreaking research for the global development of Islamic economics and finance. I'm pleased to learn that this virtual event has gathered about 1,000 academicians, researchers, and practitioners in Indonesia and in Malaysia to discuss the rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance post the pandemic, driving change through research. I understand that this webinar is part of a series of events that is being held in conjunction with the ISEF 2020, being the 7th Indonesia Sharia Economic Festival, an initiative of Bank Indonesia in partnership with the key stakeholders of Indonesian Islamic economic and finance industry. We meet as the world comes to terms with the realities of the effects of the health pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has plunged the world into disarray in the first half of this year. Entire countries have been shut down with the imposition of movement restrictions that require the majority of the population to stay home in an effort to contain the spread of the pandemic and to save lives. Individuals, businesses, and countries have had to make unprecedented adjustments to adapt to one of the most challenging and sudden waves of disruption in recent times. The IMF has gone as far as to say that the world would brace for the worst economic fallout since the Great Depression. This pandemic has caused a simultaneous global shock that has extracted huge human and economic costs within an inconceivably short period of time. During the pre-pandemic, the world was already undergoing a period of great uncertainty amidst digital disruptions and profound climate change. Yet, as history has demonstrated, periods of extreme crisis have also been strong drivers of change and innovation. One can already observe abundant creativity and innovation emerging at the national, institutional, and individual levels globally. Technology enablers have, for example, been used by governments to manage some of the immediate challenges that have been posed by the pandemic, such as contact tracing apps and the rapid test kits. As social distancing becomes the new norm today, there has been tremendous growth in the use of digital financial services and e-commerce. While no one can predict what form post-crisis opportunities will take, it is commonly acknowledged that fintech, a sector that is steeped in innovation, is likely to generate new and transformative solutions. Indeed, fintech will have an important role, and it will be through strategic partnerships across a broad ecosystem of players that would include financial institutions, the institutions of learning, the government sector, and Sharia scholars that will provide an extensive outreach, including in distributing the benefits to the vulnerable segments of the population. The pandemic caught the world by surprise. It was therefore highlighted the importance of having the infrastructure for disaster preparedness, thereby allowing for prompt response and minimizing of costs of the crisis. COVID-19 brought us into an uncharted territory. Its mitigation and resolution will involve the search for answers. Ultimately, it will be dependent on high-quality applied research, but that which is also aligned to societal goals to yield trustworthy data.
Participants, ladies and gentlemen, now we will start our plenary session.
Yet again on the importance of supporting and serving the poorer segment of the population who have the least resources that are found in both developing and also in developed economies. As governments, multilateral institutions, and humanitarian agencies search for ways to manage the aftermath of the crisis, financial inclusion would need to be an integral part of the new programs so that the abject poor and low-income households will also be part of the recovery. In Malaysia, the Ministry of Finance recently issued the country's first digital sukuk, the 500 million ringgit sukuk prihatin, under the National Economic Recovery Plan, Penjana. The issuance was in response to the interest from many quarters to contribute towards the country's economic recovery efforts. Proceeds from the sukuk prihatin would be channeled to the Kumpulan Wang COVID-19 for the implementation of economic recovery measures that include, amongst others, enhancing connectivity to rural schools, supporting research grants for infectious disease, and financing micro enterprises, particularly women entrepreneurs. While Islamic finance already has a built-in centralized screening process that looks at the Sharia compliance. It has yet to have structures to assess the impact of such financing activities. Similar emphasis therefore needs to be placed on the assessment of the impact of such finance, an area of applied research which may have high social impact, therefore needs to be given priority. Areas in particular could include Islamic social finance tools with the objective to design potential instruments for this purpose. We need to look into the identification of potentially practical and viable value propositions that would also focus on the delivery and application of fintech for such Islamic finance instruments. Of importance is the delivery system, the collection and distribution platform for such instruments, including for existing arrangements such as zakat, wakaf, and sedekah, with the objective of maximizing their social impact. Applied research should then also focus not only on such contemporary and innovative instruments, but also on how to measure the impact that the instruments have on society and to identify the limitations and gaps between the potential and actual output. This can then be followed by a framework that will enable a rigorous assessment of the impact of the various aspects covered by each type of Islamic social finance tools. With the financial reforms initiated by the international community post the great financial crisis of the early 2000s, now largely already in place, the imperative for future finance is not only to be stable and resilient, but also to become an anchor to its bedrock, the real economy, and to generate positive benefit to the wider society, and also to take into account environmental sustainability. On that note, let me thank you again for joining today's webinar. I wish all of you a very productive discussions ahead. All of us have a shared responsibility to use the period of disruption to reflect and ensure that what we do next is truly relevant to our lives, our community, and to the survival of our planet. Thank you. Wassalam.
Thank you, Tan Sri Zeti Akhtar Aziz. Participants, ladies and gentlemen, now we will start our plenary session on rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance in post-pandemic era, driving change through research, with the prominent scholars as our speakers. The President and CEO of INCEIF, Professor Dato Dr. Muhammad Azmi Umar, will be the lead research person and also moderate the session. Before we invite Professor Azmi, we would like to give a brief introduction. Professor Dato Dr. Muhammad Azmi Umar serves as the President and CEO of INCEIF, the Global University of Islamic Finance, since October 2017. Prior to this, he was the Director General of Islamic Research and Training Institute, Islamic Development Bank, IDB Group, Jeddah, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Professor Azmi has also advised and provided technical assistance to a number of IDB members' countries in their implementation of Islamic finance. He was a member of the External Advisory Group for the International Monetary Fund, Interdepartmental Working Committee on Islamic Finance. He was also a board of trustee of Responsible Finance Institute Foundation and a member of the Securities Commission of Malaysia Sharia Advisory Council, and as the Islamic finance expert to the Authority Monetary Brunei Darussalam. He was awarded as the most outstanding individual contribution to Islamic finance in the Cliff Islamic Finance Award 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Professor Dato Dr. Muhammad Azmi Omar.
Thank you very much, Ms. Widyarani, the moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Pak Dodi Budi Waluyo, the Deputy Governor, Bank Indonesia, Dr. Solikin, the M. Juhro, the Head Bank Indonesia Institute, Professor Kamaruddin Hidayat, the Rector, Indonesian International Islamic University, panel speakers, Dr. Sami Swailam, Dr. Dada Mulyawan, Professor Dr. Akram Laldin, members of the KNEKS, members of the Islamic Economic Society, members of the Indonesian Association of Islamic Economists, members of Indonesian Economics Association, brothers and sisters. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. It gives me a great honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to this webinar session with the title, Rethinking the Role of Islamic Economics and Finance Post-Pandemic, Driving Change Through Research. As previous speakers has explained, we are still in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, and the impact of COVID-19 is felt not only in Indonesia, Malaysia, but it's globally. To date, we have more than 31 million individuals infected and close to about 980,000 deaths. Hospitals in many countries, especially infected countries, are overwhelmed, and health workers are paying a major price for their sacrifices. Governments, as mentioned by, again, earlier speakers, in trying to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 has imposed lockdowns, which have also impacted severe economic growth. As we know, IMF forecast for this year will be negative 4.9% globally, global forecast. And the recovery will only happen next year, where the global growth is expected to be 5.4% in 2021. What we see is that the government is trying to balance between what we call lives and livelihood. At one aspect, the government is looking at how we can make sure that people are safe from COVID-19 pandemic, they stay safe, stay healthy, but at the same time managing economic growth. And this is a very challenging situation at this particular time. And as we know, the number of individuals impacted by COVID-19, including those impacted due to job losses, unemployment, has increased. So much so that we see many individuals in a number of countries have applied for help from the government. And government has provided a number of incentives and support in order to address the issue of poverty that happens to them in this particular situation. On top of that, we also see small and micro enterprises that are affected. And a couple of countries we see, and in fact, not only a couple, but a number of countries we see provide specific support to micro as well as small and medium enterprises. Now, if we look at the Islamic finance development, the outlook is similar. Islamic banks, takaful companies are experiencing difficulties, particularly in the context of profitability and liquidity, due to what we call the implementation of payment holidays, or in Malaysia, it is called moratorium. So individuals and companies are given time off not to pay their financing for a certain period. In some cases, it's 6 months. In others, it could be 1 year. On top of that, because of the economic lockdown, companies are unable to operate, and as a result, a number of employees are laid off in order for companies to conserve their cash and to manage their financial situation. Further on, if we look at in the case of global sukuk market, in the first quarter of this year, it shows a subdued growth. However, from middle of this year onwards, we see there is a strong interest in issuing sukuk by governments as well as by corporate sector. And the reason is simple. One of the reasons is, of course, to take advantage of the low interest rate or profit rate that is seen in many countries. So in these gloomy and green circumstances, we hear many voices, including from regulators, from economists, from earlier speakers, proposing Islamic social finance, such as the likes of zakat, wakaf, sadaqah, qardu hasan, as potential solutions to support the real economy and to assist in rebooting the micro as well as the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. We also see in this period an increase in digitalization, the increase in the applications developed by fintech companies, and also the increase in using e-commerce and financial transaction, the online financial transaction. And we also see some development in the context of in some IDB member countries, the application of blockchain in Islamic social finance. So given all these developments that we see, development in the context of the health sector, development in the context of economics, and the impact towards the Islamic finance as well as Islamic social finance, the discussion that we are going to have this afternoon is to look at what lessons can we learn from this current pandemic and what Islamic economics and finance can do to provide solutions in post-pandemic area. Of course, we do not know when the pandemic will end, but we do see that Islamic finance and Islamic social finance have a role to play in addressing the situation right now. And as again being mentioned by earlier speakers, now is the right time for us to do research, to propose solutions so that it will be taken on board by the regulators, by the government of the day. So the session that we are going to have in this afternoon will be divided into 2 rounds. First round, I will ask each speaker to spend about 10 minutes to share their thoughts on this topic. And in the second round, again, 10 minutes for each speaker, they will be talking about some potential solutions and how do we materialize those solutions. It could be in the form of policy research, it can be in the form of practical applications such as fintech applications and so on. So thereafter, we will then open the floor for question and answer sessions. So now, let me have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Sami Swailer from IRTI, IDB, as the first speaker. Can I get them to show the video?
Professor Dato Azmi Omar?
Yes.
Could you share your screen?
I'm already sharing the video. I don't have. I don't have. You want me to share the screen or what?
Yes, you can play the video with the
No, I don't
share
have a
screen
control.
feature.
I don't have a control on this. Okay, share content.
Yes.
Share screen. Did I share screen?
You can share your screen while playing the video.
No, I don't have the video. The video of Dr. Sami? If I don't have the video of Dr. Sami.
Okay, you can just continue your presentation while we're looking for the video.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So let me first introduce Dr. Sami Swaila from IDB. He will be speaking from the perspective of the institutions as well as the issues of a IDB member country's perspective. So with that note, I would like now to call upon Dr. Sami to deliver his thoughts in the first 10 minutes. Dr. Sami?
Thank you, Professor Azmi, and thanks to Bank Indonesia and all the esteemed institutions and participants in this very important event. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Very good. Since IRTI is a research organization, maybe I should focus on how to formulate a strategy of research in Islamic economics in the post-pandemic world, and what are the most important lessons. I'll try to make it as short as possible. So let me start with the most important lesson, which is the pandemic crisis is primarily a healthcare crisis, as we all know. Now, healthcare, including R&D in the area of medicine and drugs, is a collective good, is a public good. Public good means it's an indivisible good. It's either we are all getting that good or that service or none. It's very clear in the case of the pandemic, you cannot be healthy if your neighbor is not healthy. Now, for other goods and services, it's okay if I like an iPhone and you don't like an iPhone, nothing will happen to me nor to you if we have different preferences regarding this good. But when it comes to health, particularly essential health, no, either we are all together or we are all facing the great risk of the infection. So basically we are all in the same boat. That's why public goods cannot be normally offered through markets. Markets are based on competition, and competition requires divisibility, that you choose whatever you like, I choose whatever you like, but that is not the case when it comes to healthcare. You cannot say, I don't care about healthcare, I will not take the vaccine. No, if you do that, you will infect the others, and therefore it will be a disaster for the whole society. So healthcare must be provided primarily not through markets, but through non-market forces, and that's where the non-profit sector plays a major role, like as previous speakers mentioned, awqaf and donations and other similar non-profit organizations. Now, if we look at mainstream economics, they focus on the market. The first thing to study is the market. And if you open any textbook on microeconomics, you will find the chapter on public goods is at the end of the book, as if it is something, special. See, these are special cases. However, the student will start with the market and competition and and full competition and perfect competition and all these things, as if public goods is a special case and it is the exception. Well, in the real world, it is the other way around. Collective goods or public goods, they are the rule rather than the exception. No market can function normally without first providing these public or collective goods. And the market itself is a collective good. We keep talking about competition and markets and so on, but then the question, how to create a market? Is the market itself is a competitive good or a divisible good? The answer is no. To create a market is a collective activity. We have to set the rules, the regulations, the environment, and so on, in order for the market to function and to perform normally. So the market itself is a public good. The market itself is not a private good. Market design is a very important area. Unfortunately, it is rarely discussed in economic textbooks, even though there are Nobel laureates in the area of market design, but this is not part of the mainstream. And I'm sure it's not difficult to see how market design is related to Islamic finance, because from Islamic finance and economics point of view, we want to create markets with special features. So creating a market is essentially a collective activity, and it is a market design activity that is beyond the normal course of mainstream economics. Now, public goods, what is unique about public goods, that they are collective goods, is that they involve a trade-off between group rationality and individual rationality. You have seen all those people who refuse to put the masks, and they say freedom, individual freedom. Yes, there is a trade-off. I have to give up some of my individual freedom in order for me and others to be safe. There has to be this trade-off. And this tension between group rationality and individual rationality, that is the heart of the economic problem. That's where we have to redefine the economic problem, not about scarcity. True, natural resources are scarce, but the real problem in economics is this tension between group and individual rationality. This tension, if we don't take it into consideration, if we are unable to resolve this dilemma, these social dilemmas, we end up with depleting resources because of our social activity. It is social scarcity rather than natural scarcity that is threatening our environment, that is threatening the health of our societies. And therefore, we should redefine the economic problem as to be the problem of how to resolve the tension, how to bring in harmony group rationality and individual rationality. And that's where Islamic economics can contribute a lot, because Islamic economics involve the essential ingredients of morality, ethics, and so on that would balance the relationship between group and individual rationality. Islamic economics is supposed to be a universal system, not only for Muslims. And therefore, we should present Islamic economics as an approach that would help resolve these issues, not only for Muslim societies, but all societies as well. We are all at the end in the same boat. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And therefore, I would suggest that institutions involved in education and in research would put a strategy or formulate a strategy for teaching economics, not only Islamic economics, in a manner that would be helpful for humanity at large. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Sami, for sharing your initial thoughts on this particular topic. Let me go to the second speaker, Dr. Dadang. Again, because of the interest of time, I would not be able to summarize. I want everybody to speak first, and then later on we will summarize. The second speaker is Dr. Dadang from Bank Indonesia. Can we have the introduction of Dr. Dadang by the organizer? Okay, so welcome, Dr. Dadang. You have about 5 to 10 minutes to share your initial thoughts on this.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I feel privileged to speak about this very interesting topic today, rethinking the role of Islamic economic finance. That means there's something that needs to be emphasized more, and then post-pandemic era. It is the thing that we need to understand about the characteristic of the system after the pandemic, what makes different and how to adapt. Thirdly, driving change to research. This is very important, how to make the Islamic economic and finance to be always ahead of the curve, to understand, to criticize, then to develop and to contribute. Of course, when we talk about the role, equipping the Islamic economy with more instruments and mechanisms to improve first, it has to be more resilience in facing uncertainty. And then it has to have also a quality economic development outreach and environmentally friendly development activities that has been, can you put the slide on, organizer? Okay. I'll go to the second slide, please. Okay. Let me convey my thought in two main ideas. First, to understand the new landscape after the pandemic. And secondly, how Islamic economic and finance adapt and adopt the condition in order to be able to contribute positively and significantly to the prosperity of the society. Next slide, please. When we talk about the landscape and then position of the research, as we can see here, research and development should cover all aspects in the ecosystem of the Islamic economic and finance. This is the position of research and economic development. What we are trying to develop here is first, business model development that cover halal value chains, behavioral analysis, and then how the Islamic economics can contribute particularly to outreach the low-income society. And then here about the regulatory framework, corrective action, and standard setting activities. And of course, supervisory approach, method, data acquisition. Data is very important because without having data in the pocket, it will be very, very difficult to analyze and then further contribute in how to rectify the situation. And then about the coverage also should cover production, financial sectors, fiscal policy, and innovative mechanism to anticipate major economic challenges that what we are facing today. Pandemic COVID-19, it was unimaginable before, but we have to deal it and try to contribute with new mechanism, instruments that can help out the government in relieving the suffering of the society and go back to a normal condition. Next slide, please. When we talk about pandemic, COVID pandemic, positively, of course, if we see from the positive side, COVID-19 as a super changes to high connectivity, but subsequently lower response by all systems. From technological invention, dissemination of science and technology becoming more advanced and faster, it will become more easier for people to learn from others, to repository knowledge systems, from, well, Google's things, something that previously was very difficult to learn, now has become more easier. Secondly, product and business life cycle, new product, business model, enter markets, and customer preferences swings also more easily. And then the third, the shift of portfolio investment, and then equipped with more innovative, feasible set flow of funds, it will become easier for the investor to shift their investment from one portfolio set to the others. Next. Next slide, please. A lower tau here, or time response, and higher variations of the instruments will, of course, it is beneficial, but on different side, create higher dynamics in the financial system that requires prompt and comprehensive policy response by the government and authority. That's why, taking the example of Bank Indonesia, for example, Bank Indonesia has implemented the policy mix that not only concentrated on the monetary, but also macroprudential, and with the coordination with fiscal sectors and others, with OJK. So we have to come up with a very massive and well-designed policy response, and well, including this coming COVID pandemic circumstances. But however, the Tao in certain real economy, like agricultural sector, remain unchanged. If we want, the farmers want to put the seeds and to cultivate, the Tao remain the same. 3 months is always 3 months. So, well, it will, create greater disparities in the capital market. Of course, it has to be also, considered by the investor that, not only a highly portfolio set is always, the best, portfolio set to choose. And then shorter product life cycle industry combined with stiffer competition would create thinner financial buffer for the industry, with higher number of business failure and more demand for creative startup project. As we can see, by the development of technology, and then the more dynamics, and then of course, the challenge is to keep the stability on the prudential corridor. And then the sixth, the more social buffer is required to anticipate economic disparity as a result of stiffer competition. Next slide, please. The success of the Islamic economic and finance depends upon the ability to be a part of the dynamics and to provide tangible solution to the challenges that are faced by the society, including the government. So we need to show to the government, the president, ministers that look, Islamic finance, economic and finance is a solution. It's one of the solution for them to equip them with additional mechanism and instrument to rectify the situation. And the objective is to strengthen. There are 6 objectives: industrial structure, efficiency, investment, reduce disparity, human resource development, and sound macroeconomic policy. And for the Islamic economic and finance, the area which need to do research activity more intensively in order to have capacity to drive the change are the following. Next slide, please. What I mean is to put more emphasis doesn't mean that we have to ignore other discipline of research. Of course, some quantitative research, macroeconomic research, they are also important, but to put more emphasis on these 5 followings. First is the research in the area of behavioral economics. That come in mind that resource allocation is very important in improving internal stability of the system. Learning from the SRI classes of investment in the Euro, we can see that loyalty, the concern by the loyal investors to certain type of investment set has improved the stability in the capital market, and the inducement of Islamic value to the economic decision-making by public may ease the pressure. Secondly, the theory of incentive. At the micro level, Islamic financial contract have to be contained both Sharia compliance aspect as well as economic appeal. For example, the introduction of incentive, reward and punishment, principal-agent relationship. This is very important to make Islamic contract more appealing and then more providing justice to the contracting party. Third, macro-prudential theory. Well-developed policy and instruments to maintain stability of Islamic financial system is deemed necessary. May I also take the example of Bank Indonesia that has implemented the macro-prudential indicators there to which is linked to lending to deposit ratio, and the incentive to the bank that has already fulfilled their obligation to intermediate resources from the deposit to the real sector economy, and then to the one that has been fulfilled, and then reward is given in terms of lower cost of fund that will enable for them to excel more. The fourth, digital economics, the introduction of Sharia compliant smart contract to support halal value chains is very important, not only to improve the efficiency operationally, but also improving the traceability that is very important to well present the halalness to the customers. Next slide, please. And then the last, Islamic economic finance. It has been also discussed earlier, that comprehensive development of the ecosystem comprising of the business model of the, of course, zakat is zakat, but the way it is disbursed to the, recipients requires some techniques that can, be able to empower them. And then regulatory framework, education, of course, education, because zakat, wakaf is not about symmetry. It is about something that can be productive and useful for improving the competitiveness edge of the nation. And then the legal framework. Well, through my presentation today, I call all researchers in Islamic economic and finance focus on the impact of the Islamic economic and finance and how to collaboratively pursue this objective, which includes researchers in authorities, academics, players, standard setters, and the government. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much, Dr. Dadang. So, I mean, in essence, what he said is quite similar as an extension of what Dr. Sami Swaila mentioned. But let me go to the third speaker, whose background is Sharia, which is slightly different from the two earlier speakers. The third speaker is Professor Dr. Akram Laudin from ISRA. So I would like to call upon the organizer to show a short video before I call Prof. Akram to deliver his speech. Thank you very much. Just my short note there. I think the photo looks 5 years younger. Okay, so Prof. Akram, the floor is yours.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you very much, Prof. Azmi, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Alhamdulillah, first of all, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His grace and mercy. And I believe that this webinar series about rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance in post-pandemic era is timely in manner, in which this is the time when we really have to look at what will be the situation in the future and how we are going to address and how we are going to face the situation in the future. Now, as pointed by Prof. Azmi, my presentation will be very much skewed towards the Sharia aspect on how we deal with the post-pandemic situation. First, I think if we look into the different principles of Sharia, we can find that there are rooms in order for us to kind of address the different issues that we are facing in the pandemic. Take, for example, if you look into the Qa'idah al-Fiqhiyah, or the legal maxim, which says, لا ينكر تغير الأحكام بتغير الزمان والمكان, meaning that the rulings can change with the change of place and also situation and time. Now, of course, nobody will imagine that we are going to face this kind of pandemic throughout our life. I think, I mean, since our childhood, we have not experienced this kind of pandemic. And for sure, I mean, this is an exceptional situation where there will be certain exceptional rulings of Sharia that can be applied during this time of pandemic. And we do have some other, I would say, legal maxims that we can also rely on it. Take, for example, al-aslu fil uqud wa shurut al-jawaz wa as-sihha, meaning that the presumption of validity and permissibility applies to all contract and also all condition. Now, I mean, this is a great kind of maxim or qaida that we can always apply it on the ground, where as we know that when it comes to matters related to mu'amalah, compared to matters related to ibadah, there are quite a number of flexibility that we can always maneuver around it. You see, take for example, we know that most of the Islamic products today is based on contracts. Okay, we have the different contracts, the murabaha contract, the ijara contract, for example. You see, the musharakah contracts, whether it is, you know, sale-based contract, lease-based contract, or whatever type of contract. Now, in most of the cases, sometimes we feel that, well, I mean, whenever you enter into a particular contract, then you are, quote unquote, stuck within the contract because you have agreed on the terms, on the condition that has been there in the contract. Now, under such circumstances, unusual circumstances, is there any room from the Sharia perspective, for example, for us to relook at the condition? And I think this is one of the area when there was a discussion. I remember that was the discussion was during Ramadan. You see, where during the Dallah Barakah conference, I mean, there is an extensive discussion. And I remember even, I mean, the scholars were discussing under such circumstances, whether can we have, you know, adjust certain rules or certain conditions, I mean, because of the unusual situation in which we are in. Yes, I mean, I think the consensus among the scholars at that time is that, yes, I mean, there are rooms, there are avenues, you see, for the contracting party to come back, to sit back, you see, and also discuss about how to amend and how to come up with a solution with regard to certain circumstances in which we are in nowadays. And I think this kind of flexibility we can always use in the different type of contracts that is available. In the contract of murabaha, for example, you see, I think I can comfortably say that most of the contracts in the Islamic finance world nowadays is based on sale contract, which is the contract of murabaha. Now, when you have kind of, we understand that quite a number of regulators, for example, I mean, they have provided the moratorium. I mean, some have, you know, make it mandatory for the bank to provide moratorium, such as our situation here in Malaysia, where the bank have to provide moratorium for 6 months for the client. And in some jurisdiction, I mean, it is an optional situations. Now, when you enter into a murabaha contract, for example, and you have capped the price, of course, I mean, if you look into the ruling strictly, there is no avenue for you to increase the price because when you extend the tenure, of course, I mean, there will be certain costs into it. So a sale-based contract, I mean, there is no room for you to increase the price unless, I mean, if at the inception, I mean, you have ballooned the price and then you are giving rebate to the customer, then perhaps there might be certain rules for maneuver. Now, in such circumstances, of course, I think, I mean, from my personal view, is that this is the time where the social dimension should come in. Of course, on one side, we do not want the bank to burst. See, on the other side, I mean, we need to protect the interest of the customer. You see, I think here come the role of the Sharia scholars. I mean, how do we balance between to protect the interests of the industry, to protect the interests of the banking industry, and also to protect the interests of the client as a whole. You see, take for example, I mean, no compounding kind of rate or what, I mean, can be imposed. You see, of course, I mean, when you have cap, I mean, the price, then you cannot go beyond the price. So I think apart from, I mean, and Sharia did discuss, you see, on restructuring and how do we realign, you see, the contract in order to take into consideration the interests of the parties involved. So this kind of flexibility, I would say that it is very much there, you see, and if you look, I mean, there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet says, "As-sulhu jaizun bainal muslimin illa sulhan harrama halalan aw ahalla haraman wal muslimun ala shurutihim illa shartan harrama halalan aw ahalla haraman," which means that reconciliation is allowed among the Muslims, except for this reconciliation that makes the lawful unlawful or the unlawful lawful, and the Muslim will be held to their condition, meaning that they have to abide by the condition that they have agreed, except the condition that has made the lawful unlawful or the unlawful as lawful. So I think the room for us to maneuver, for us to find the solution is always there within the general framework of Sharia. That is, so from the conceptual point of view, I would say that we will always have the solution, you see, in which it can be agreed by the parties, and as all of us know, I mean, the general kind of maxim that we always mention when it comes to matters related to mu'amala is that al-aslu fil ashya al-ibaha, meaning that originally when it comes to matters related to mu'amala, I mean, it is allowed. Okay, so how do we perhaps plan and also find the solution within the boundary that is given to us by the Quran and also by the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So from the conceptual point of view, I would say that there are a lot of research that need to be done. There are a lot of perhaps, I mean, even if we look into the pandemic situation, I mean, we read in the book of fiqh, there are the discussion, you see, on certain exception that is given during the time of pandemic, not only in matters related to mu'amala, even in matters related to ibadah, I mean, which is more serious, we can say that in Islam, but when it comes to situation which is unavoidable, then there is always the solution for it. So I believe that, I mean, it is important for us to ensure that the bottom line is that, you see, the research that we do, I mean, have to combine, you see, between the practical aspect on the ground, how it can be applied on the ground. And I believe that the scholars will have to discuss on the boundary in which Sharia have provided us, so that we can always find the best solution in order for us to face the pandemic. I think I'll stop there for the time being, and perhaps, I mean, if there is any chance, we can move forward later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Akram. Now, I go back to the issue at hand. Here we have three speakers earlier on talking about the context of research that needs to be done. Dr. Sami Swanan talks about, you know, the core of developing a strategy in terms of teaching Islamic economics, balancing between group rationality and individual rationality. And then we have Dr. Dadan talking about the new landscape of Islamic economics and finance research, looking at behavioral economic, incentive theory, micro-prudentials, digital economy, and Islamic social finance. And if I can add on what we call environment, the impact of sustainability is also very important. And of course, some will incorporate together the Maqasid al-Sharia into this analysis. And Prof. Akram talks about, you know, the research in in Sharia to address the current COVID-19. But let me ask a question to our panel members. What kind of research are you currently implementing in order to provide solutions to the current situation as well as post-COVID-19 situation? Maybe from your own institutional research work. Are there any specific works that you are doing? Because this kind of answer will help the audience to understand better and subsequently maybe discuss potential collaboration. So I start with from Prof. Akram first, and then we go to Dr. Dadang and Dr. Sami.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Azmi. Perhaps I think ISRA as a Sharia entity, our research focus is very much related to Sharia. And I think one of the areas that we are looking into it, and we are also discussing with the regulator on this is, I mean, the situation post-moratorium. As we know that, you see, during the period of moratorium, I mean, there is this gap of 6 months. I mean, for our case in Malaysia, we have the period of 6 months where people do not pay, you see, whatever is, I mean, they owe to the bank. And during this period, of course, I mean, the initial contract that is being, or agreement between the financial institution and also the client will always go on. And of course, I mean, from the bank perspective, you see, when they delay 6 months, the payment, and that will be brought towards the end, they will always make their own calculation in which, I mean, they will say that, of course, I mean, we need to recover, I mean, the losses that is incurred between these 5, I mean, within, I mean, this period of moratorium. Bearing in mind, of course, in Malaysia, I mean, the government have also announced that people can, I mean, those people who are affected with COVID-19, they can also request from the financial institution for an additional period of moratorium for another 3 months up to the end of the year, for example. You see, so of course, I mean, this will add to the burden to the financial institution. So this is one of the area we are looking into how, when it comes to restructuring, you see, whether you need to enter into a new contract, whether the existing contract is sufficient for you to address, I mean, this issue of imbalances and whatnot. So this is one of the area we are looking from the Sharia point of view, what is the solution? Because bearing in mind that there are different contracts that is being used, you see, and different contract will have different way on how we will address it. We have the sale-based contract. We have the ijara contract, I mean, the lease. We have the partnership contract and whatnot. So different kind of contract will have different implication and different way on how we deal. So this is one of the area I believe that it is important for us to look into it. The other area that we are also working with certain parties is that how do we integrate between the different safety net that is available within Islamic economic system. I think quite a number of speakers spoke about wakaf, zakat and whatnot. So how can we mobilize, I mean, all these powerful instruments in order for us to address the impact of post-COVID. So these are among the areas that we are working on it, Prof.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Dr. Dadang to share your thoughts on the topics that you are working on, especially related to current as well as post-COVID. Yes, please, Dr. Dadang.
Thank you, Pak Azmi. There are at least 5 areas that, you know, needs attention for us to further improve quality of research. First, about the financial stability that links to the macro-prudential policy, that links to the liquidity condition and how the Islamic money market, for example, interbank Islamic bank money market, how it has to be maintained prudentially in terms of instruments and mechanisms, taking into consideration that Indonesia is applying the dual banking system. Secondly, it's about the digital economy that links to the halal value chains. Halal value chain is a broad base of knowledge that we need to really develop because it will links to multidisciplinary area that includes technology, technology, and then finance, and also the application, for example, an API in the banking system, and also a startup company that can integrate the productivity of economy in one country by using some economy that has the capacity to outreach the low-income society, but potentially contribute to the future development in economy. The third is the Islamic social finance. So it covers not only regulatory, but also innovative way to collect, innovative way to disperse, and how to integrate this one. Like, for example, I will take one example is the launching of the cash wakaf link sukuk, that alhamdulillah with also your support, and also the World Bank, IDB at that time, we are able to integrate 3 sectors simultaneously, fiscal sectors, commercial sectors, and Islamic social finance, that it can give more credential and public trust in the future that Islamic social finance really beneficial to, particularly in facing unforeseen adverse circumstances. And then the fourth, about the education. Education is very important because it is how we can induce Islamic value in that is, can be put in harmony in the currently issues in the global platform, for example, with SDG, how to put Islamic economic context in, Islamic economic and finance into a global context. Information system and how, the supervisory framework, and then cross-institution coordination can be conducted. And lastly, if I may call, we have to learn also about the past Islamic civilization. What has happened in Turkey, for example, because we can see, so much development took place in Turkey, in Bosnia, for example, on how, in a very early stage of modern economic development, they can build, very amazing infrastructure at that time. Maybe we can pick some lessons and then put in the context now, and how we can, try to synthesize into a modern policy. Thank you, Basmi.
Thank you. And now I would like to call upon Dr. Sami Swailam to share your thoughts for about 5 minutes before we open the floor for question and answer session.
Thank you, Professor Hazmi, and thanks again to our colleagues, Dr. Dadang and Dr. Kamaluddin. IRTI is doing research on multiple fronts. One main area or major area of research is applying fintech solutions and blockchain systems to solve or address development issues. For example, we developed a smart credit management system. It's a blockchain-based system that would integrate credit cooperative insurance, credit rating, credit reporting, and incentive for payments. And IRTI already obtained 2 patents on that system, one on the system itself and one on the blockchain consensus algorithm. We are also working on how to apply artificial intelligence to improve financial inclusion and to help those who have little financial collateral to be able to obtain funding through reputation collateral or reputation equity through the social media. The pandemic, of course, stimulated so many proposals, and one of them is to create or establish SDG virtual currency or cryptocurrency. It's a currency designed to support and fund activities serving the sustainable development goals among member countries. There are other areas that we think are very important, but as you can see, many of the all these areas are focusing on social aspects. And I think the development, the fintech developments would be most beneficial to the social sector, to the social finance sector, because that's where most of the challenges are. Thank you, Dr. Azmi.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have spent almost like 1 hour getting different perspective from the three speakers, from the, from the kind of research that needs to be done, subsequently what research they are doing based on respective institutions. Now, I would like to call upon the floor, the audience, to ask questions. We have about close to about 35 minutes, or rather 30 minutes for question and answer session. Can I get the organizer to open up the questions to the audience, please? You may introduce your name, then the questions. Please.
Thank you very much, Prof. Azmi, for the opportunity. First of all, I would like to congratulate the committee for organizing these webinars on rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance post-pandemic, having changed through research. I would also like to say thank you for sharing the perspective, Prof. Dadang, and then Dr. Sami Suwailem, and also Prof. Akram Laldin. I have two questions. The first question is reflection. So in rethinking the role of Islamic economics and finance, we all understand that it is important to understand the current reality prior to determine the future research agenda. So in one hand, we know that the pandemic is still here and we don't know how long it will last. And at the same time, economy must also run to prevent widespread poverty and severe negative impacts, especially to most vulnerable people, as has also been explained by the honorable speakers. Now, with this reality, I'm wondering what objective should be prioritized by Islamic economics and finance. We have listened Pak Dadang with 5 research areas to improve, and also Dr. Sami regarding the fintech solution, artificial intelligence, and also Prof. Akram regarding the fiqh, the solution to avoid more negative impact to Islamic finance. So what objective be prioritized by Islamic economic and finance? What research areas, what research agendas that should be prioritized, and what strategies be pursued to achieve the objective? Given,
that's already,
perhaps,
there's a first question.
Yeah.
The second question?
Yeah, I think I have combined them together.
Okay, so strategies to use. Let me repeat the question before I get the others to respond. The first question is on the research priorities given the current pandemic.
Yes.
Okay, and secondly, the strategies in implementing those research. Okay, maybe I can get the thoughts from the members here. Anyone?
Prof, if I can just start first, perhaps maybe later on Dr. Sami and also Dr. Dadang can. I think one of the priority areas that we need to look is, I think many of us, we spoke about the social net instrument that we have in Islamic economic system. You see? But if we look into Waqaf, for example, Waqaf has not been utilized at its maximum at the moment, right? I think we can go to so many Muslim countries. You see, I mean, there are still, scattered kind of effort that is being taken by different parties in order for them to implement zakat, implement wakaf, for example, right? Of course, I mean, different country we can understand. I mean, they will have different kind of situation, right? Now, and I think one of the areas that we need to look is that how we have efficient financial system. We have banks, let's say capital market and whatnot, you see. But then how can we use, I mean, all this infrastructure that we have in the banking sector, in the capital market sector, in order for us to empower wakaf? I know that there are certain effort that has been taken nowadays. You see, for example, there are some banks in Malaysia, I mean, that they are using their infrastructure in order to collect cash wakaf. I mean, that is great. I mean, it is very good effort, you see. I mean, this is kind of, I would say that you are trying to bring wakaf, you see, into the mainstream by using the infrastructure that is available. I think we need to do more research on this area. How can we integrate between these different social netting that we have in Islam in order for us to move forward? Otherwise, I mean, everybody will be doing works on their own. And what are the obstacles, for example, if we need to change certain law, for example, if we need to come up with certain ruling and whatnot, we need to do research on this so that we can really move forward. I mean, we have wakaf, we have zakah, we have sadaqah. I mean, all these great institutions that we have seen that it has been deployed in the past, you see, and the result of it is, I mean, tremendous. I mean, it really brings impact to the society as a whole. But why it is not bringing the same impact nowadays? So we really need to look into what are the obstacles, how can we overcome the obstacle and maximize, you see, the impact of all these instruments. Allahu A'lam.
Okay, good answer. Can I get from the others? Dr. Dadang, yes.
Okay. If I may respond about the priority needs to be done, you know, in the midst of COVID-19, I think the most important and urgent is to understand which segment of the population is the most impacted by these events. It's like, you know, in a mathematical way, how to find the eigenvalue, meaning that what is which segment is impacted, and then what kind of innovative mechanisms and instruments can be deployed to, you know, to move the resource allocation from the sources, and including in collaboration with the government, of course. Secondly, we need to think of the acceleration of the implementation of digital technology, because we have seen, you know, that digital technology has been able to improve the efficiency, particularly the change of the activities with very low costs, marginal costs, particularly in developing countries like Indonesia, for example. Previously, we suffered from, you know, some difficulty in doing, you know, logistic transaction and everything. But with the use of technology, digital technology in particular, and then we can minimize and reduce optimally these obstacles in these operations, and then how these activities can have also Sharia compliance assurance that this transaction by using digital, and then of course codification of contract according to Sharia, because when we are applying the digital technology, it will link to the needs of the utilization of the API, open API, between financial institutions and also provider and recipients. And I think two main areas should be in priority. Thank you, Pak Asmi.
Thank you. So in essence, what you mentioned, Dr. Dada mentioned, plus Prof. Akram, quite similar. I think one similarity is the issue of how to address those impacted by COVID-19. And of course, one of the proposed solutions is the usage of Islamic social finance instruments. And to do that, the idea of using digital technology is being put forward. Why? Because one thing is the cost of transaction is lower, and the outreach is even bigger than face-to-face transaction. Dr. Sami Suhaila, your thoughts on this?
I think the overall strategy, the grand strategy,
yes,
is how to bring back morality to economics. In the 19th century and 18th century, economics was part of the moral sciences or social sciences, moral social. So they were very close together. Adam Smith himself, he wrote The Wealth of Nations, as we know, but he also wrote Theory of Moral Sentiments. He was a morally inclined person. Unfortunately, during the 20th century, economics and finance became almost completely disconnected from moral values. So the grand strategy is how to bring back morality in a rational, consistent, integrated manner. This is the grand strategy. And now how to implement that, that's where we need, of course, digital systems, and financial technology will play a major role. Regulations, all these things will come in. From Sharia point of view, to formulate maqasid al-Sharia in a manner that will make it conducive for research on integrating these objectives with economic analysis. So I think that would be the grand strategy. If we want to have very specific strategies, then different sectors or different parts of the society will have different specific strategies. But I think this is the grand strategy.
Yes. So you, thank you very much, Dr. Sami. So you're putting a cover of all the ideas you mentioned by the earlier speakers. Okay.
Yeah.
So can we get maybe one or two more questions from the audience, please? And introduce yourself, and then we can raise the questions here.
Yes, Professor Azmi, I have a question.
Yes, please. Maybe you can introduce yourself first before you raise the question.
Thank you, Professor Azmi. I'm Reza Anglingkusumo, head of Bank Indonesia Institute Research Center. First of all, thank you for all the panelists for very insightful presentations. My question is for Dr. Sami Suhaila. I find your idea about market as a public good quite refreshing. Would you kindly elaborate more on how research in this area should proceed going forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can get one more question from the others before we can ask the panel to respond. Any questions from the audience first? Okay, if not, maybe we can get Dr. Sami to respond to the question. Okay, so we have, yes, an audience, yeah? Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
My name is Ahmad. I'm in Jogja, Indonesia. Congratulations and thank you to the committee session chair and the speakers for this session. My question is simple and relatively general. So, to what extent do you think research has contributed to our effort to improve the role of Islamic economics and finance in the economy in the current situation and also in post-COVID-19 pandemic era? And also, what do you think has hindered such contribution from the research? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is a very broad question that can be addressed to all speakers. Okay, so let me get first to Dr. Sami Suhaila, questions from Bank Indonesia Institute. And then the second question is, I think, to any of you can respond to the question. Dr. Sami first?
Yes, creating a market is one of the strategies for supporting development. And the two winners of Nobel Prize last year, they were granted the Nobel Prize for their experimental work on topics very well related to that. We think that, okay, let's give charity, right? Let's give charity, but charity is not sustainable. We have to help people, right? So you teach person how to fish rather than just give him a fish. So basically, if we help people create the market, that would be a sustainable strategy for supporting development in the long run. And that is one of the key strategies that the Islamic Development Bank is now adopting, is to support development through creating markets. Now, the market itself is a public good. The market itself is not subject to competition. It is subject to collective, it's a collective endeavor. And this collective good or public good is studied in mainstream economics, but it is considered as if it is something marginal or an exception. You will find it in text in microeconomics, they will talk about public goods. And then there are writers who talk about tragedy of the commons, how resources can be depleted by internal competition between the members of the community. And that's, of course, a major cause of the climate change crisis. So mainstream economics in general, they are aware of these things, and many economists contributed to this, but it is not part of the curriculum. If I go back to, pick any microeconomics textbook, not any, okay, I would say the majority of microeconomic textbooks.
The mainstream, you would say.
Yes, the majority. These issues are marginal. It is not at the core. We want to change the system, and that's why I think we should start with the curriculum, because those people who study today 101 economics, those youngsters who study today 101 economics, 10 years down the road, they will be the Minister of Finance, the Minister of the Economy, the Minister of Planning, the Minister of whatever, maybe the Prime Minister, maybe the Secretary General of the United Nations. So it is useless, it is fruitless that the students are studying that the objective function is to maximize utility. The objective criteria or the criteria is to maximize utility and to maximize profits. And this is instilled in their brains. And then 10 years later, we tell them, oh, we have climate crisis problem. You have to change the way you think. It's too late by now. So if we are able today to convince many people that we have to change the way that we think, the next generation will come with the same background, with the same distorted understanding of the system. And we have to fight all over again to convince the new generation that, oh, there is a problem, you have to think about it. So if we plan it well, if we plan a curricula that would clearly show convincingly, it is not emotional, it's not that, just looking at things from purely emotional perspective. No, it has to be in a rational, logical, convincing manner, supporting evidence with logic, that this is the right way to look at the economy. The economy itself is a social institution. The market is a social institution. To create this market, we have to have a collective agreement among the members of the society how to build this market. I mean, take, for example, if we want to create a market, where shall we put that market? In the southern part of the city, in the northern part, in the capital, on the port? These are social decisions. These are collective decisions. These are not subject to competition. So creating the market itself is a collective activity, a social activity. And we have to understand this. So I think that's the way we should approach economics, so that those who study economics and finance, they understand from the beginning that the problem to be solved is these social dilemmas. They call it social dilemmas. If we can, this is part also of game theory, which is very, very useful. I mean, game theory, there are so many branches of economics. Some of these branches have been infected with the mainstream. But if we take the best of game theory, the best of behavioral economics, the best of all these branches, we can develop a coherent framework that how to develop a proper market that would function and serve the whole segment of the society. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Can I get Dr. Dadang to respond to the second question earlier on?
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to also second to what Dr. Sami has already said. If we go to the second question, how research can improve, I would like to clarify into two: expose empirical research and ex-ante conceptual research. I think there are too many people is doing empirical research, which is basically try to learn about pattern, about the historical data and how it interacts and how it responds. It is important, but it's not sufficient. Because what we need is to understand the interaction between the players and how to provide incentive that in the future we can reshape the mechanism in the system in a better manner. And then, of course, you know, if we learn about economics, the terms, the Pareto optimum is very, very, common. But what is the meaning behind it? Is the meaning that in the market, everyone that contribute to the activity should be protected their interest. So in the long run, it can sustain the utility of each and every participant in the market. So again, when we talk about utility, utility can also be classified into worldly utility and even celestial utility, meaning that morality in it is very, very important. Like, for example, in the Islamic social finance, if somebody wants to pay zakat or awqaf, particularly awqaf, so the question is, what's the benefit for them? Of course, if we talk about the monetary benefits, it will reduce the wealth. But of course, if we talk about, say, our journey to the hereafter, it can give, kind of guarantee that, look, I will be allocated a good place after I die. But if we also combine into the concept of contract here, maybe we can also identify an abstract utility by the players. Like, for example, if somebody is happy to see if others also prosper, and then the paying of awqaf can also improve the utility of himself, because he can see, oh, look, our brother now, brother son is going to school. And then they can also take care when they need to take them to the hospital. They will get proper, education. And then the shortest part of utility. If, for example, now I'm in a good shape, but if things happen, and then, oh, alhamdulillah, I have some confidence that if I go broke or things happen to me, and then to whom should I, give my appeal to get help? Of course, from my brother. And then this is the thing that we need to also bring this together into one concept, into one utility, and then to make them in one complete contract that shows appealing to the social investors, commercial investors, and how to combine this between the commercial and also the environment. Environment is a part of it, because why? Let's say, is it bothering if, if I put some investment that can destroy the environmental condition 100 later? If I have this long-term utility, of course, it will distract me and it will stop me from investing in that particular sectors. So I think this is the thing, how to rationalize the inducement of Islamic value into economics and to put it, comprehensively and properly in the regulatory framework. I think Islamic values is always also goes along with the SDG initiatives and how to bring this together to show that Islamic economic and finance also, walk in harmony with other initiatives. Thank you, Pak Azmi.
Thank you, Prof. Akram.
Maybe just a brief one. I would like to ponder, I think, what has been said by Dr. Sami and also Dr. Dadang, in which it is very important because we always talk about this maqasidic dimension in whatever that we are doing nowadays. And I think in Islamic finance, it is very important for us to, ensure that we depart from all the legalistic kind of mindset or mind frame, to look into the impact of whatever that we are doing. And I think this is also another, important area where research can contribute. And back to the question that was asked earlier on about the research contribution, and I believe that it is important for us to go into the applied research. Yes, there are wonderful fundamental research that has been conducted in many institutions. I would love to see more interaction between the industry players and also the academia, because I think this is one of the areas that we are lacking nowadays, where there are wonderful things that academia are doing on one side, but at the end of the day, it is there on the shelf, but when it comes to implementing it on the ground, very few effort is being taken on looking how, this wonderful research that is being done, time that has been spent, money that has been spent, can be applied on the ground. So I would urge, this kind of collaboration between the different parties in the industry, and also academia. And I think for Sharia-based kind of research, it is very important for us not to just stick to one school of Islamic law. We have been doing research, for example, I give you an example on Waqaf, at ISRA. And one of the wonderful things that we discovered, through the different views that is given in Majma and others, is that, we can have a temporary Waqaf, we can have a permanent Waqaf solution, all right? And that can be embedded within, for example, the sukuk structure that we structure. So, if we strictly follow one particular madhab, for example, in trying to find solution, then definitely we will get stuck. And I think sometime in our part of the world, in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, perhaps Singapore, and this part of the world, there is a tendency for us just to, focus and rely on the Shafi'i school of Islamic law. There is no issue with that, but then sometime when there are, in matters related to mu'amalah particularly, if there is some sort of flexibility that we can find in other schools, as long as it is not against the explicit injunction of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, why not, we try to explore the different views, the different interpretation that is being given by the scholars in other school of Islamic law. And I think this is the role that the researchers have to find, not just to be dogmatic in whatever that they are doing, but trying to find a practical solution that can be applied on the ground. So I believe that, that is a great contribution that the researcher can do when it comes to research related to Islamic finance. Allahu A'lam.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we have here is that one is the focus on first the theoretical research to set the philosophical foundation, how the economy should be driven, and then to fill in those things, we need to have empirical research as well as policy research. And of course, doing empirical research requires close interaction between the industry and the academia. Okay, think before we end, we have about 5 minutes. Let me ask each of you to take about 1 minute as one message that you want to give to the audience. Just 1 minute each. We start with Dr. Sami Suhaila. What message you want to give to the audience in 1 minute?
Thank you, Dr. Azmi. In 1 minute, I encourage decision makers like Bank of Indonesia to lead the balance of the Islamic financial industry. Currently, the industry is 80% commercial banks, and you cannot see even on the radar the Awqaf and other non-profit sectors. So I would suggest that decision makers, including the central bank, to follow a strategy or to adopt a strategy that would diversify the Islamic financial industry and give specific incentives and regulation to protect and support the non-profit entities in order to perform their duties. So the Bank Negara already developed this value-based intermediation strategy, and this is very helpful, but I think the next step, the natural next step, is to expand the strategy to include the social the Islamic social financial industry. So that's my message.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Dadang?
My message is, inshallah, simple. Be connected to the real challenge that comes, in a variety of condition, and be the part of the ecosystem by producing high quality research that is, in accordance with high standard methodology and acceptable to the, to the all reader and understandable. Thank you, Pak Asmi.
Thank you very much. Prof. Akram?
Okay. My message is that, you see, particularly, I mean, in this post-pandemic situation, we need to bridge the gap between the have and have-nots. Because I think, I mean, this is one of the areas that the policymakers, I mean, it is the responsibility of everyone to look into how we have seen a lot of sufferings during this period, during this pandemic period, and how can we alleviate, I mean, those people who are less fortunate in the society and bridge the gap between the have and have-nots. And I think this is a wonderful responsibility that all of us have to really think about it and plan ahead and take action so that we will have a more balanced society and everyone, will be kind of live in a decent living. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are now 4:28. Again, on my part, on behalf of INCEIF, I would like to thank Bank Indonesia first, BINS, Bank Indonesia Institute, for inviting me to moderate the session, and also to thank the panel members, Dr. Sami Suhaila, Dr. Dadang, Prof. Akram, and all the participants for making this event a success. Thank you very much. And now I pass over the session to the MC, Ms. Widyarani. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the fruitful discussion. Participants, ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of our agenda today. Hopefully, the webinar would bring constructive insights for everybody, especially on the important issues discussed. We would also like to invite you all to join the 6th International Islamic Monetary Economics and Finance Call for Paper and Webinars, which will be held on October 27 to 28, 2020. Kemudian untuk Bapak Ibu peserta dalam negeri, kami ingatkan kembali untuk mengisi kuesioner yang linknya telah kami bagikan melalui fitur chat. We hope to see you again at the next event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and stay safe.
Waalaikumsalam.
Mas Yudi, terima kasih Mas Yudi.